The automotive world has always thrived on surprises, on those moments when manufacturers step outside of expectations and deliver something so bold, so outrageous, that enthusiasts and skeptics alike are forced to stop, stare, and reimagine what's possible. For decades, the Volkswagen Beetle has been a symbol of simplicity, practicality, and cultural identity. It was never about brute force or unhinged performance, it was about accessibility, about a personality on wheels that fit everyone's lifestyle. But the year 2026 brings a reinvention so radical that it flips the legacy of the Beetle on its head. Today, we are diving deep into the story of the 2026 Volkswagen Beetle Hellcat, a fusion of heritage and insanity that no one ever saw coming, and yet somehow, feels like the ultimate answer to the question of what happens when nostalgia meets unapologetic power. Imagine the classic curves of the Beetle. Those unmistakable fenders, the rounded roofline, the smiling face of a car that defined generations, now merged with the snarling aggression of Dodge's legendary Hellcat powertrain. On paper, it sounds like a joke, a fantasy concocted in the fever dream of some mad car enthusiast scribbling in the margins of a notebook. And yet, here it is, alive, real, and more shocking than even its most daring supporters could have expected. Volkswagen has reached across the aisle of performance culture, tapped into the American muscle heritage, and dared to drop a Hellcat heart into a Beetle body. The result, a rolling contradiction that makes perfect sense the moment you hear it roar. The first thing that hits you when approaching the 2026 Volkswagen Beetle Hellcat is its stance. This isn't your grandmother's Beetle, the quirky commuter car of the 60s or the playful icon of the early 2000s retro revival. This is wider, lower, and meaner. Volkswagen engineers reworked the chassis to accommodate not just the massive Hellcat engine but also the reinforced suspension, upgraded brakes, and drag-ready tires required to tame such a beast. The body remains instantly recognizable as a Beetle, but the detailing screams performance. Flared arches accommodate massive wheels, the front grille now incorporates aggressive air intakes, and a functional hood scoop rises above the bonnet, feeding oxygen to the supercharged V8 lurking beneath. At the rear, a pronounced diffuser and optional wing remind you this car is built for more than cruising boulevards, it's here to dominate. And then, there's the sound. Turn the key, and the Beetle Hellcat awakens with a guttural growl that feels almost wrong coming from a car so often associated with peace, love, and flower power. But wrong in the best possible way. The 6.2-liter supercharged Hemi V8, tuned for the Beetle's unique application, pushes out a staggering 717 horsepower in its base configuration, with a special edition rumored to crack the 800 horsepower mark. This isn't parody, this isn't cosplay performance. This is raw, legitimate muscle performance tucked inside one of the most unlikely shells in automotive history. Mash the throttle, and the Beetle Hellcat launches forward with ferocity, pinning you to the seat, the supercharger whine blending with exhaust thunder to create a symphony of chaos. It's not just about straight-line speed, though. Volkswagen insisted that the Beetle Hellcat couldn't merely be a drag strip monster, it had to handle. To that end, engineers worked on rebalancing weight distribution, reinforcing the frame, and dialing in suspension geometry to keep it planted. Adaptive dampers allow drivers to switch from boulevard cruising to track attack, and massive Brembo brakes ensure that all that forward momentum can be reined in with confidence. Still, no one pretends that this car is subtle. It's not built to sip fuel quietly on your commute. It's built to be loud, outrageous, and unforgettable. Inside, the Beetle Hellcat continues its balancing act between heritage charm and modern aggression. The familiar dome-like roofline provides the cabin with that airy Beetle feel, but everything else has been reimagined. Heavily bolstered sport seats grip you tightly during hard cornering. Alcantara, leather, and carbon fiber trim elements mix retro styling cues with performance-focused touches. The gauge cluster has been redesigned to highlight speed, boost, and power delivery, with a special Hellcat insignia glowing ominously on startup. Infotainment remains cutting-edge, with Volkswagen's latest digital ecosystem, but let's be honest, no one buys this car for touchscreen menus. They buy it for the thrill, the theater, the sheer ridiculousness of piloting a Beetle with Hellcat power. What's fascinating about the 2026 Volkswagen Beetle Hellcat is the cultural statement it makes. On one hand, it's Volkswagen poking fun at itself, acknowledging the Beetle's soft reputation and turning it into something radically different. On the other, It's a genuine celebration of automotive passion, a recognition that sometimes, cars don't need to make sense to be iconic. We live in an age where electrification dominates the conversation, where efficiency and sustainability dictate the direction of most manufacturers. Against that backdrop, the Beetle Hellcat feels almost rebellious, a last hurrah for gasoline-powered lunacy before regulations and technology steer us toward a quieter, cleaner future. Driving it is an experience that defies logic. From the outside, you see a Beetle, a shape associated with friendliness, safety, and accessibility. From behind the wheel, you feel like you're piloting a rocket disguised in a cartoon body. The torque is instant, the acceleration brutal, and yet the familiarity of the Beetle's proportions makes the whole thing feel surreal. You look out over the iconic domed hood, only now it shakes and vibrates with the pulse of a supercharged monster beneath. You glance in the mirror and see those wide hips stretching out, housing tires barely able to contain the fury they channel to the pavement. It's absurd, and it's addictive. Volkswagen has been careful to present the Beetle Hellcat as more than just a gimmick. They've released limited production numbers, ensuring exclusivity and collectability. Each model is individually numbered, with special plaques and build sheets that authenticate its origin. Options allow buyers to customize with throwback paint schemes, including retro pastel blues and yellows that look almost innocent until you hear the exhaust note. There's even a Flower Power edition, a tongue-in-cheek nod to the Beetle's hippie heritage, complete with daisy decals and interior floral patterns, except under the hood lies a Hellcat engine ready to shred tires at will. Critics initially dismissed the Beetle Hellcat as a publicity stunt, but early reviews have silenced many of them. Performance benchmarks show it capable of hitting 0 to 60 in under 3.5 seconds, a quarter-mile time in the low 11s, or better, with drag radial tires, and top speeds well beyond anything a Beetle badge has ever seen before. Track testing proves it can handle corners respectably, though no one is pretending it's a Porsche 911 GT3 competitor. Instead, it carves out its own category, a fun-first, audacious statement piece that blurs the line between joke and legend. Collectors are already clamoring for it. The idea of owning a Beetle with Hellcat power is irresistible to enthusiasts who love oddball mashups and future classics. This isn't just a car. It's a story, a conversation starter, a rolling meme that also happens to outrun most sports cars on the road. Years from now, people will look back at the Beetle Hellcat as one of those rare moments in automotive history where a company dared to be ridiculous, and it worked. And that's really the magic of the 2026 Volkswagen Beetle Hellcat. It shouldn't exist, and yet it does. It shouldn't make sense, and yet it makes perfect sense. It's a celebration of freedom, creativity, and the idea that